So in this video, I'm going to be reviewing Yami versus Kenpachi video made by Mr. Crafty Scales. And just to point this out for everybody, don't go slandering broski. We have our differences on how we power skill in that. And I am doing a collab video with Mr. Crafty on Meliodas versus Asta in every arc, in which we are currently discussing certain arcs and where both characters scale. So I have no beef with broski. This was actually a request from one of my subscribers, so shoutouts to you, broski. Don't know how to pronounce your name, but it is what it is. So without further ado, oh yeah, and also I'm not going to be doing going heavy on the editing. I'm editing on my phone and I don't really have my computer with me, so it is what it is. But without further ado, let's get straight to it.
Hello YouTube, this is the awaited promised video. Kenpachi Zaraki, the so-called strongest Shinigami, the Yami Sukihiro, the imaginary captain of the Black Bulls. These characters can be attributed to being alike with their bashful, more tough demeanors, with some being more psychotic than the other, but more or less they're very combat driven. Again, this is my 8,000 subscriber special, so I really hope you guys enjoyed it and you've earned it. Okay, this being a bit of a different format. I'm actually talking about both of these characters at the same time, just going over metas and see how they stack up against each other, starting with speed. And I think the realistic lowest end for Yami is just light speed. As in the early mid-40 chapters, Yami can casually get some light attacks from light magic, which, mind you, Yuki Tabata goes out of his way to show that light has the same properties of actual light, as well as just being blatantly stated to move at light speed, and these characters can move at said level as well. Only for in the same chapter that they actually surpass the speed of light, and Yami can still keep up. Only then he was shown he was holding back and he ramps up, so at a minimum, Yami would be faster than light. Some calcs have estimated even as much as 4 times, just from this instance. Even if you want to disregard calculations, this would be still an absolute.
So this is a common misconception a lot of people have when it comes down to scaling Black Clover's speed, is which they try to say that Yami states that Patri's light attacks is faster than light because of his statements, but they get the situation the other way around, because in chapter 49 Yami states that his attacks got faster, and then in chapter 50 he says they're light speed, which implies that prior to chapter 49 they were not moving at light speed. So when Crafty says that it's faster, it's kind of, I wouldn't want to say fallacious, but it's just wrong. And then after Yami says it's light speed, Gauche states that although he was able to react to Patri's ultimate attack, he also states that, oh, that was light speed. So it's kind of consistent that Patri's max speed attacks, his light speed, well, not light speed, his light attacks, his max speed is just light speed. And the other thing that the Crafty got wrong here is that, although he probably didn't take into consideration, is that Yami has ki sensing. He can't perceive the light attacks, as I'm pretty sure he states himself, but because he has ki, he's able to react accordingly, in which the calc that he gave, they don't take that into consideration. So Yami has precognition, and because of that precognition he's able to react to these light attacks, which means that he wouldn't actually scale to them.
Minimum. Now, I do need to talk about this quote-unquote retcon to Lightspeed Black Clover, as in chapter 375, when Morgan is revived, which, by the way, spoiler alert, he uses light magic, which normally is fine, as yes, light magic inherently starts off at the speed of light, but can be increased with the user. However, Yami makes the statement that this attack happened at light speed, and was seemingly implied that the only reason why he avoided it was due to one of his spells. Now, I don't think why I need to explain how bad it would be that a demon pill Yami is struggling with light speed, and how it would be detrimental to this discussion. Unless, I don't know, you think that Bleach characters are like Mach 3, like Jujutsu Kaisen or something.
Why does JJK have any relevance to the discussion on Bleach's speed? Like, just because it's stated that Naoya had reached like Mach 3 or whatever doesn't necessarily Like it's not the same verse. It's completely an irrelevant argument to bring this up. And it's also kind of different because the narrator says this, but not a character, and not in the character's own mind that says this. So him bringing this up is completely irrelevant. I have no idea why he brought this up.
Now the question is this valid? Well, let's look at this just from the English translations first. Yes, the statement is pretty blatant, however, this is seemingly contradicted by the actual visual showings just within this chapter, as Yami many times reacts to these beams without Black Moon. In fact, he seemingly never gets hit by it once, and the speculation of this statement only grows when you actually look at the actual raws. For what it states, a rapid attack at the speed of light. I'm busy defending against a Black Moon. Now this doesn't imply that, the speed was too great for her. He's just making a statement, which in fact with the actual context, we know that the actual danger was the potency and the amount of he can spam. Even at the worst case scenario, if he is increasing the speed, we see that the main problem is the amount of them. Meaning, no, this isn't a debunking light speed Black Clover for.
It kind of does defeat the whole light speed arguments with Black Clover, or more so cripples them, because a lot of Black Clover power scalers would argue hundreds or thousands of times light speed Black Clover. But if Yami is supposedly hundreds or thousands of times light speed, and he's struggling with like 20 light beams that are at light speed, then it kind of does cripple him. Well, cripple the versus speed scaling. And especially when he has precognition and is a lot further away from the starting point of these light beams. So I don't see your argument as kind of valid to like try refute the blatant statement. And it also kind of goes against what you're going to say in the future of this video. And also the attack potency wasn't really the problem, because Yami, as you showed, was swatting them away with his sword. So it wasn't a AP problem, but a speed problem.
Past metas. Now on to Kenpachi's side of things. Something we need to just go over is the infamous Mach 500 Dean statement. Again, if this is the case, it would be detrimental to this discussion, as if they're only lightning timers by the first 400 chapters, that doesn't really give them much time to grow. But back to the actual argument. People argue due to the 500 times statement, it would be a reference to the actual sound of the clap, or 500 times the speed of sound. However, the mask data book clears this up, with the 500 times being in reference to the actual speed in which he strikes his hands, or his own speed. So yes, Bleach fans, you can rest easy. Mach 500 is no more your speed cap.
So this is a infinitely better refutation to the lowball interpretation with the Bleach speed than what he was trying to pull with Yami's speed. So yeah, I just wanted to shout that out. But yeah, anyways.
However, we can use the 500 times speed increase as a good measurement for how fast Kenny actually is. Even as far back as the Soul Society arc, Kenpachi was one of the strongest captains and could bully the likes of Ichigo. So Ichigo, who could, as far as back as the Substitution Shinigami arc, can intercept Quincy arrows, which are just stay to be light, and even rays of light. As well as even weakened lieutenants are able to react to dodge to Nagashion, which is just stay to be light, or beams, or rays of light on so many occasions, it would just be disingenuous to say that it isn't. Even Udio can blitz his own shadow, which gets around half the speed of light, if we're using calcs. Even some of the weaker Espada members can react to sunlight before it hits them, so saying Yin is at a minimum of light speed really should be too much of a problem. Then of course his attacks are 500 times faster with Bankai, and he can actually double set speed with Byuto Rinji, pulling out between 1000 times the speed of light. And that's even before the Blood War, which he gets massively faster, even unlocks his Bankai, which is between a 5 to 10 times amp. Now, I know just by seeing this you're going to say, well, Kenpachi's obviously faster, it's a 4 to 1000 times difference. However, this isn't even applying some basic inverse to Yami. For example, a post time skip double arm Asta is able to give him an amp to combo to 80% double mana Dante. Mind you, the actual differences in percentages with double mana say to be astronomical, and we do see when he's at 100% of his power and gets half, he drops down to 50%, showing that the actual difference between percents is linear, with a base Dante already clowning on Asta and his higher farms, and the double arm amp, which is shown to be a little bit of the double fusion later, is able to close an 80 times difference. And only assuming double union is giving the equal amount per major body part.
So when I first saw this, this kind of came off kind of biased in my opinion, because he's going like balls deep into Yami's speed with him using like multiplying stacking, which I don't really agree with the notion of the percentages of devil power for like Dante and that being like a one-time increase or something like that, because you presuppose that his base is only utilizing 1% of his devil power. And since he in base is using gravity magic, which is Lucifer's power, we know he's using some percentage, but you would have to prove that it's 1%. And just because we don't see like any devil features doesn't mean he isn't using a percentage of Lucifer's power. It's the same case with Asta. When he first got his sword and his grimoire, he was using a percentage, not a percentage, some percentage of Li base power, because he was able to nullify magic and reflect magic, so on and so forth. So you can't really say that 80% Dante is 80 times stronger and faster than base Dante, since we have no quantification on what percent he was using. So I do view this as kind of like disingenuous, but not intentionally disingenuous. And also, if you were to be fair and also go balls deep with Kenpachi's multipliers and that, you'll get a lot higher than what you can get for any Black Clover scaling, speed scaling. Because if we're saying that Soul Society arc characters are around light speed, just think about the amount of amps Ichigo gets to the point, well, up until the point where he fights Gin, and then Gin stacking 500 times of a multiplier on top of his speed. And you can get into like the war arc of Bleach and so on and so forth, and then Kenpachi unlocking his Shikai, and then which is arguably equivalent to a 5 times amp, but let's just ignore that. And then he gets like Bankai, which is a 5 to 10 times of an amp, and so on. So you're not really being kind of fair, in my opinion.
2 arms, legs, and a torso. The Devil Union multiplier would be a 400 times increase. And we see Austin.
What the hell was that? You're using body parts to determine the multiplier for a form? How does that make any sense? And where are you getting these numbers from? Because it's also kind of contradicted by the own story, because partial Devil Union Asta is stronger than Devil Union Asta, as stated. So, and Asta only has like a devil arm with partial Devil Union. So like the manga contradicts this notion. So I don't know why he's using, yeah, look at me stuttering. I don't even know why he's saying this. This is just not the Crafty that I know.
In base, the arc prior can fight people who already equal to said previous Yami. So again, a minimum 4 times 400, we get 1600. And Yami at a time was fighting better than Devil Union Asta in base. Not to mention Yami's Devil Pill transformation that's debatably surpassed Zeton, which is an increase of 10s to 100 times. Now,
so I have 2 problems with this. The first problem is that the scan doesn't imply that the Demon Pull is a equivalent amp to the Zeton amp, because all Ichika does say, or more so imply, well, doesn't even imply, she just tells us the properties of what the Demon Pull does, as she just says that your physical abilities goes berserk, with obviously your intent to kill also increases. So it's like, it doesn't really imply shit for the most part, although you do get stronger. And as for the Asta thing, it's all metaphorical, because he just says it's as though it got X amount of times stronger or whatever. And whenever they explain the ability, when they visualize it, it's only a 10 times increase. As we see one of the characters that was being visualized does like 5 attacks, because they split up their Zeton, and each one was a 2 times amp. And when Asta visualizes it and splits the Zeton in half in the visualization, it was only a 5 times amp. So it's just a 10-fold amp.
Yes, if you want to go the all-over analysis, then you can probably estimate the increases they get throughout the story to get some inflated result. I'm not going to be doing that because A, that's way too much work. It's also just not appealing to the average user. And B, you got to think about author's intent. Like, if you go to Kubo or Tabata and just say, hey, did you know so-and-so is 500,000 times the speed of light? He'd probably just look at you and think you're crazy. But hey, if you're being a Discord debater, by all means, go crazy. Also,
I 1000% disagree with like the whole author's intent nonsense, because once the story is written, the author's intent is no longer valid. If the author intended for their verse to be like, I don't know, city level, and he accidentally will somehow gives them like a planetary feat, then it's like the intent doesn't matter. And also, if we were to use your logic, then like Yami would like cap at around light speed with the whole trying to debunk light speed demon pull Yami. But obviously you didn't do, so it kind of, you kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. And also, what do you think like multipliers are made for? It's to multiply the stats for the most part, or the ability for the most part. If you don't use them because you think the author never intended them to be this fast or this strong, then why would they put that in there? And especially when you have canon multipliers for these characters like Bleach. The multipliers are there for a reason, to multiply their stats. So it is the author's intent to use this so-called multiplying stacking to make his character stronger and faster without needing to make or show such feats. So I think his argument here is kind of flawed, or more so his ideology is kind of flawed.
they would just probably get to similar results due to how early they achieve this level speed and how relative their multipliers are. Now, the question of higher ends, there really isn't any for Kenpachi, as I do believe there is at least a higher end. It only really applies to Yuha. So at the end of the day, Kenpachi caps at those massively faster to light ranges. However, Yami is a different story. For the anime rendition of the 6-month training arc, we see that Yami with his dimension/equinox can seemingly destroy all of Dorothy's dream realm. This being important as it's implied to be infinite, as Luck, one of the best mana censors in the verse, says there are no borders to this place, it's endless. Now, the common debunk to this is questioning Luck's credibility and how they claim that it was debunked by Magna, which, by the way, he's one of the worst mana practitioners in the entire verse. However, the argument is not predicated on either of them. After the whole debacle between the two of them, the actual creator of the realm confirms Magna's disbelief by saying, here in Glamour World, the impossible is possible. Mind you, she is the supreme ruler of this realm, and she can make anything she wants within her realm, which would logically include an infinite space. Now, yes, you can pull out the whole no limits fallacy, but due to the context of this interaction, it's quite apparent what Tabata was trying to portray, and you need to think, unless directly contradicted, why would the mangaka put this there if it wasn't his intent? Also, people tend to forget that the legit next chapter, they quite literally make an infinite supply of water, so yeah, there's just that. Meaning for Dimension/Equinox to completely destroy and traverse the whole space, it would need to have traveled at infinite distance, which just isn't Yami's actual speed, but a hack for his attack speed. Now,
so I have 3 problems with what Crafty just said. The first one is Reeves responding to Magna saying the impossible is possible doesn't actually support or proves that Glamour World is infinite. Or she's saying that it is possible if she wants it to be so. So it doesn't really suggest or prove that Glamour World is infinite, just it can be infinite if the wielder wants it to be so. And as for the other thing that I disagree with is Yami cutting Glamour World in half. That's in a filler episode which hasn't been proven to be canon whatsoever. I've seen Broku's video, made a whole video debunking all notions of universal Black Clover, and the evidence is just not sufficient, or not really evidence, because the evidence was that the author gave the animators some ideas for the episode, and that's pretty much it. Just because the author gave an idea or a few ideas doesn't mean that one of those ideas was make Yami destroy Glamour World. The other argument that he made is presupposing that the Glamour World was infinite when Yami destroyed it. You would have to prove that Dorothy, which is a different person to Reeve being in Dorothy's body, made Glamour World to be infinite in that scenario. It's a case-by-case thing. You can't just say, yo, it was infinite when Reeve made it, or whatever. Therefore, whenever Dorothy casts Glamour World or uses Glamour World, it's by default infinite. It doesn't work like that.
Their attack potency is much more debatable. However, we're going to take this meta by meta, starting with Bleach. And a honest lowball, in my opinion, is planetary. So is Kenpachi planetary? So probably one of the most visually appeasing feat that Kenpachi does is destroying the meteor that Grammy conjured up. Now this feat outright doesn't get to the planetary ranges, at least consistently, but due to the size, speed, and mass of it, it's more consistently calculated in a few hundred exaton to even zegaton range. There's enough energy to minimally destroy the moon or even small planets, and Kenpachi can just obliterate said meteor. Not to mention he has a Ronkai, which gives a minimum of a 10 times increase, which can be debatably more due to how his uniquely works. Or just in case both ends spots around small planetary, which is good when we're talking about the lower ends. As I see people that he massive upskills by this point can casually cause massive multi-continental wiping blast. Now unless you think Soul Society Ichigo is planetary because he stopped the Sokyoku, then yeah, he would just be planetary from the get-go and would only massive upscale from this point. However, I don't personally believe in this meta, as this assumes they were going to use this planetary busting power on a depowered Rukia. Like, sure, it can be planetary if we assume Aizen's not lying. However, we have no way to prove that I was using its full extent of its power, nor is it consistent. However, light novel.
My brother was cooking, but I still have some problems with what he just said. So first off, the burden of proof would be on you to prove that Aizen was lying when he says that it has planetary power, the Sogyoku, so on and so forth. And the other thing that I have a problem with is that you didn't really bring up the data book pretty much supporting Aizen's statement with the Sogyoku having that level of power. And also, what makes Ichigo more concretely planetary is that he was able to destroy the scaffold, which would have been strong enough to tank the Sogyoku's attack, well, planetary's attack, if it were to go all out, as that's what they use to execute Soul Reapers. And we don't know if they have to replace the scaffold every single time. So yeah, that's how I would argue planetary Ichigo in the Soul Society arc, and there's nothing really contradicting that notion for him to be that strong. And that's pretty much it.
Kenpachi is a bit more of a monster than his manga counterpart, as not only can he body the Soul King Kanda Hinoki, but can also one-shot Soul King Amped Ancient Hollow, someone that's so strong even in his past can beat a young Yamamoto, which even we assume he's relative to his old self with one arm, while just in Bankai and existing he can threat to destroy the entire Soul Society's planetary body. Again, Kenpachi's even put on these Ichigo and Aizen levels of power, and that level of power is stated at power equal to be able to destroy and even recreate the worlds as you wish. Assuming the realms of Bleach are only planets, then this has gotten to the dwarf star levels of energy, that is 10 to the 39 trillion zeros, by the way. And Kenpachi, not even in Bankai, is hyped to be on that level of power. So can Yami keep up with this? As we already got over, Yami is way up there in the current hierarchy of Black Clover, and we're seeing the latter arcs of pre-typed Captain Dorothy can create an expansive world with it containing 2 moons in it, and our friends over at Versus Battle Wiki have determined just create a dimension with 1 moon would require energy equivalent to 6.72 Yoda tons of energy. Again, this gets pretty consistent when Dante's out here creating mini black holes. And if you want to get on the calculation side of things, assuming bare minimum Asta scales to 7 feet at the start of the post-time skip, then give him the already established 400 times multiplier and double union, then Yami towards the end of the arc upscales that in base, and then his devil pill gives him an amp between more than 10 to 100 times. Then we see a low ball planetary route Yami would be able to output energy equal to that of Kenpachi if we're assuming he's relative to the world destroying and creating statements.
Okay, so a few things I disagree with. One is him using Glamour World to try scale Dorothy's AP. By the record, Glamour World grants her the ability to create things in this space. you would have to prove that she's able to create these things by her sheer power alone, and not via hacks or via glamour world. The best feat that she has is just destroying some boulders without glamour world. And the other issue I have is that you're presupposing that these moons are the same size as our own, which we have no way to quantify if those so-called moons are the same size as our own, or at any size, as moons vary in size. And also the calc that you posted, the calc's adding the equation of a planet being inside that dimension, and also the distance a moon would have to be from a Earth-sized planet. It's not a calculation of a dimension with just a moon. Completely different. You'll get a completely different value, as the dimension can be like a bit bigger than the moon in order for the moon to fit inside said dimension. So I think it's kind of I'd have to say it's kind of fallacious to say that's what she did. And seeing how when she created those two moons, there wasn't a planet that they were on. So it's just completely wrong.
Again, I would like to say that this is ignoring a lot of inverse on Yami's side, but I digress. And getting into the more higher final ranges for the both, we have Kenpachi scaling above the Ichigo, who can debatably destroy a dimension either with a star or more potent than a star, or based Dante, who can bend light at 90 degrees with pure gravity, which, by the way, something as massive as with the GB of the sun can only barely bend light at 1.75 of an arc, or probably Kenpachi taking an edge with gravity seriously curating the space with multiple galaxies in it, which would be consistent with the Zero Squad shaking the three realms just by releasing their Bunkai. The only thing when talking about the final range that can help get to that level, the size of Dante's light feat, is upscaling Glamour World and saying that there are stars and galaxies she created, which due to the massive upscaling from the point, I'm sure Yami would get to that galaxy, not multi-galaxy beyond range, maybe even stronger due to the upscale. However, I can see how there are still mostly...
So I have two problems with this. Number one, Dorothy's Glamour World spell thing. The galaxy in that monster's mouth doesn't exist in the manga. There's only light in that monster's mouth, and there are no stars. The other thing is with Dante's gravity bending quote-unquote light. That light is kind of questionable because it's not light speed, as Gauche's light can be reacted to characters that got perception blitzed by Patri's light attacks that weren't stated to be light speed at the time, only a few chapters later, which I'm referring to Asta, by the way. And the whole, oh, he can bend these lights, but then the natural light from the sun are nowhere near affected, is kind of questionable to try quantify Dante's gravity power. And it's also worth mentioning is that it's kind of, I would say, fallacious to say that because he can bend these magic lights, therefore he's, I don't know, X amount of times stronger than the sun. Which the reason for that is because the sun's gravity is roughly 2 or 3 times, could be a bit higher, like stronger than our own gravity on Earth. And if we were to assume that that's the case, then we would have to assume that's the case for everybody within fiction that can manipulate gravity. Like, remember that guy in Seven Deadly Sins who has gravity manipulation or gravity magic, and he can like amplify gravity by 10 times or something like that? Would he then be 10 times stronger than star level? He can even amp his gravity 300 times or 30 times, depending on how you want to look at it. So it's like, it's more so a hack's ability than a actual feat. That's how I view it, though. You guys may view it differently, but yeah, that's all I have to say.
Relative. Again, there is some inverse we're ignoring on both sides. The only difference between them is that Yami's feats are happening at least halfway through the story versus Kenpachi happening towards the end, which is why I'm giving the edge to Yami. Now, there is the highest end for the both of them, as yes, Kenpachi is debatably on a Soul King level of power, and should scale to the whole destroying and creating the world. He's also able to crack the Garganta, with the Garganta itself being stated to be an infinite expanse, which also encompasses the Mukin, which is stated to be infinite many times, giving Kenpachi potentially high universal scaling. However, the same can be said for Yami, as not only can Lucifero destroy Glamour World, hell, even fractions of his power can do it, but more importantly, Dorothy herself can actually power and create Glamour World, which we've already established to be an infinite space. And Yami by this point would at least scale to that level of power in base, only for him to increase more than 10 to 100 times in his Demon Kill state. Okay, let's break this down. I think looking at this from a general standpoint, they are extremely relative. From either scaling line, we see they come out in similar ranges. Not saying one isn't massively stronger than the other, but it's not like I'm comparing a city-level combative to a planetary one. However, the reason why I side with Yami being the stronger out of the two is how early his feats happen, and how massively he grows in power. He just has the story progression advantage on Kenpachi, and his transformation is just much stronger than his, and speed's pretty blatant as well, as it follows the same logic as the AP scaling line. Not to mention, he has key sensing, which dramatically upscales his perception and reaction speeds. But probably the main win con for Yami is his Dimension Slash, as it not only bypasses their ability by slicing dimensions, as we've already discussed, it has the range and AP to destroy an entire infinite universe. Now yes, Kenpachi can slash space, but not to the same range or speed as Yami. Not to mention Death Thrust, which is just a more compact, faster, and stronger version of Dimension Slash. Overall...
Okay, so let's talk about the Yami stuff first. So again, he's presupposing that every time Glamour World is casted, it's infinite in size. And he's assuming that Lucifero destroyed Glamour World when all he did was destroy the portal that will take him to that space, as Dorothy just wasn't fast enough to actually put him in Glamour World. And I forgot the other guy's name, Morris, supposedly destroying Glamour World, which doesn't really seem to be the case, because we see what's her face, Dorothy, was so fucked up that she couldn't continue using the spell. So you could interpret it that way, rather than Morris, he destroyed that space. Or you could say that due to his supposedly conceptual manipulation, he was able to destroy that space, which then would just be a Hax beating another Hax, which wouldn't scale you anywhere. And him also presupposing that Dorothy created Glamour World via sheer power alone, which assumes that for her to cast that spell, it would be an infinite amount of energy in order to do so, which he which he failed to prove. What else? Yeah, it's just pretty much that. He needs to prove that, in order to activate Glamour World, I need to exert an infinite amount of magic, so that Glamour World can create a infinite size space or whatever, and also prove that the space by default every time she casts Glamour World is infinite in size. But as for the the Kenpachi thing, I don't really have much issues with what he said, but the thing that I do have is him bringing up that Yami can destroy Glamour World with Dimension Slash Equinox for a speed feat, or for a speed argument to say, Dimension Slash Equinox is infinite speed. But he didn't really bring up the fact that Yami can crack the Garganta, which the Garganta has a infinite space within it, implying that the Garganta is bigger than that infinity. And also the fact that the Soul King Yuha was also going to destroy the Garganta in order to create a new reality, pretty much, as implied in the manga, which would also imply, since since Kenpachi scales to these supposedly characters in the light novels, he would also have that same level of power, which would also mean that he would also have, with his attacks, infinite speed or whatever, if you want to go crazy. And what was the other thing? And also, pretty much, it gets Yami's AP a lot higher than what you can give Yami, even if you were to say he's 400 times above the baseline high uni, because that's still like somewhat finite. Whereas for Yami, if there's an infinite space within the Garganta, and the Garganta is said to be infinite, based on Crafty, then wouldn't that suggest that the Garganta is infinitely bigger than a infinite space? Wouldn't that imply that, at least? But yeah, that's pretty much all I have as a review. This isn't like a debunk video. This is just what I disagree with, what I agree with, and things that I don't really need to add on. So yeah, without further, what am I saying? Anyways, that's all for this video, and shout outs to the guy that recommended me to make this review, and until next time, peace.